Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Thanks for coming. My name is Trang. I'm responsible for the Ministry of Planning and Investment. Today, I'd like to talk to you about inflation in Vietnam in 2008 and the reasons for this problem. I'm going to break down my presentation into two main parts. Firstly, in the overall picture of inflation in Vietnam in 2008, and secondly, main reasons for high inflation. This will take you only about 7 minutes, and feel free to ask me any question at the end of my talk. So let's start with the overall picture of Vietnam inflation in 2008 by looking at some of these graphs. The first graph describes the inflation rate of Vietnam from 2003 to 2008. It's clearly for you to see that the inflation rate in 2008 increased sharply from 8.3% in 2007 to 18.3% in 2008, and is the highest inflation rate over 6 years. So, in the next graph, you will see the inflation rate in Vietnam compared with some Asian countries such as China, Korea, Hong Kong, and Korea. And also, the inflation rate in Vietnam in 2008 stands at the highest point compared with that of other countries. According to Vietnam's government figures, consumer price index have risen 21.4% in September, while rise in other Syrian price are projected to rise 38.2%. Besides, housing and construction material costs are estimated to have increased 22.6% because of higher steel price. Only in second quarter, steel price rose 40% compared with that in the first month. So what are the main reasons of this problem? Let's move on to the next part of my talk to answer this question. I have divided the reason into two main parts. They are credit expansion and higher input costs. Now, we come to the first reason, credit expansion. In 2008, Vietnam has received substantial net capital inflows. Total foreign direct investment is 57.1 billion US dollar, and you can see some countries which have the biggest capital invested in Vietnam in the graph below. It's clearly for you to see that Malaysia is the biggest investor in Vietnam with 14,866,105 US dollar. The second position is Japan, and the next is Canada. It's quite surprising for us to see that USA stands at the lowest point in the graph. Besides, ODA has remained an important capital source for infrastructure development and environmental protection, with contract worth close to 1.7 billion US dollar. To absorb and thereby reduce the tremendous influx of US dollars that suddenly came into Vietnam, the government bought a huge number of dollars with Vietnam dong. Not long afterward, an enormous amount of Vietnam dong was rapidly put into circulation, and this caused the price to increase. This will likely mean that more imported products will enter Vietnam, and made in Vietnam products will not sell if they are not cheaper or better than foreign imports. Now, we come to the next reason, higher input costs. There are three areas in this part: recent increases in global oil, food, and raw material. In July, global crude oil price in any time increased from 140 USD per ton. According to IMF statistics, crude oil price in 2006 rose 20.5%. In 2007 is 10%, and from the beginning of 2008, the crude oil price in global market has risen over 42%. In the world, the Syrian price rise sharply. According to FAO figures, food price in 2007 increased 50%, and in 2008 is 60%. The price of foodstuff in this year has went up to 29.69% compared with that in 2007. Rice price in 2007 increased about 70%. And especially from the beginning of 2008 to now, its price went up to 100% to 150%, and it hasn't intend to decrease because there isn't any improvement in demand-supply relation. Besides, raw material price also increased too high. Non-material costs such as iron, aluminum, and steel went up to 64.1%, especially steel price in March 2008 risen to 14.5%. Global, compared with that in 2007, global coal price was the highest in more than 30 years. In several times, its price went to approximate 1,000 US dollar per ounce. Well, I have introduced you about the overall picture of inflation in Vietnam in 2008 and the main actions caused this problem according to the estimate of analysis. So that brings me to the end of my presentation. Let me just run over the key points again. Firstly, we look at the situation of the inflation in Vietnam in 2008, and secondly, I have mentioned the factors lead to inflation condition in Vietnam nowadays. Obviously, recent inflation situation in Vietnam caused by different reasons, but it's important to discover the root cause of the problem. So from this, we will easily to find out the solution accordingly. Despite the government has taken some action to prevent the harm of the crisis, such as austerity policy to keep the exchange rate at a competitive level and increasing currency reserve, but this policy seems not to be effective. So we need to have a correct vision to give our correct decisions. Finally, we hope that the inflation rate in Vietnam will decrease as soon as possible and our economies will get better sooner. Thanks for your attention. Do you have any question for me?